The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis. Introduction. Thomas Hamperkin, born in the year 1380, 20 miles northwest of Dusseldorf, at Kempten in Rhenish Prussia, was the second son of Johann Hammerkin, a peasant, and his wife Gertrude, who kept a dame school. Kempen is now a town with a citadel of 5,000 or 6,000 inhabitants. When about 12 years old, Thomas was sent with his elder brother, John, to Deventer, a town in the Netherlands, in the province of Overijssel, which is still known for its schools. They went to a famous school in Deventer, which had been founded recently by Gerhard Groot. Gerhard Groot, born in 1340, was the son of Wenner Groot, burgomaster at Deventer. At the age of 18, Gerhard attended the degree of Master of Arts in the University of Paris. Then he taught philosophy and theology at Paris with so much enthusiasm that he was called Gerhard the Great by a play upon his family name of Groot. He throve at first in worldly life with a couple of good livings, but gave them up on the persuasion of an old fellow student who had become prior of a Carthusians at Arnheim. He retired then for 3 years to a Carthusian house in Munich-Chinsen, was ordained a deacon, and in simple habit, as one vowed to poverty, began to preach reformation of life in the chief towns of the Diocese of Utrecht. His attacks upon familiar vices were so direct that he called forth active antagonism. "Let us go to the devil in peace," said a rich man to him in Zool. "That is just what I shall not do," Groot answered mildly. He was at one with Johann Thaler, who had died in 1361, and with others known to the world as German mystics, who respected the whole system of theology, but sought only to lift the souls of men above dogmatic teaching to the spiritual heights of a true Christian life. In his home at Deventer, Groot collected copyists who were to diffuse the scriptures and the writings of the early fathers of the church. He allowed his copyists to form themselves into a community, supported by its earnings and based on the apostolical ideal. From this model sprang 100 other little communities of the same kind. The mendicant orders then attacked these religious brotherhoods because they lived by the work of their hands, and this was against the decrees of the popes. Groot defended the new brotherhoods, and in 1376 they were formally approved by Pope Gregory XI. In 1381, a visit to Resbruck suggested to Gerhard Groot the formation of a religious house as center to the whole life of the various brotherhoods, formed on the model of his brotherhood of Bible copyists. There were in those days no printers. 3 years afterwards, in 1384, Groot died of the plague, which he had caught in attendance upon a plague-stricken friend. But in 1386, a monastery of regular canons of his order was founded at Windersheim, near Zool, which is about 18 miles to the north of Deventer. Within the next 75 years, there sprang up 150 houses, formed according to the rule of these regular canons of Windsheim. One of the most earnest of the disciples of Gerhard Groot was Florentinus Radwin, whom Gerhard named as his successor. He was born in 1350 at Leerdam in South Holland and had studied at Prague. Drawn to Deventer by interest in the work of Gerhard Groot, he became vicar of the Church of Saint Lebune in Deventer. It was he who had persuaded Gerhard to the shaping of his Brotherhood of the Common Life, or Brotherhood of the Goodwill, that formed at last a chain of houses, Frautrum Domi, extending from Cambay in the Netherlands across North Germany to Culm in West Prussia. Each house had usually 4 officiating priests, and the rest were brethren, employed in the handicrafts and copying, and students. Thomas was who, when he entered the house of Deventer, over which Florentinus Radwin himself presided, was known among his companions as Thomas from Kempin, Thomas A. Kempis. Gerhard's fundamental principle in teaching was, make the Gospels first of all the root of your studies and the mirror of your life, for they portray the character of Christ. Then you may add the acts and words of the apostles, the epistles of St. Paul, the lives and opinions of the fathers, and their devotional works. In Radwin's school at Deventer, Thomas A. Kempis said that he found all modeled upon the humility of the apostles in forming a mirror of piety, all the brethren being of one heart and one mind, self-denying, devout, and full of mercy. The house founded at Winsheim was soon followed by another on Mount St. Agnes near Zoll, and because he desired calm health of mind, not sickly craziness or self-glorification in religion, Radwin put these 3 questions to those who desire to join his community. Do you eat well? Do you sleep well? Do you obey readily? Thomas A. Kempis, whose mind was essentially contemplative, when he left Deventer, was advised by Radwin to join the community on Mount St. Agnes under Radwin's brother John. Their convent was placed under the Augustinian rule, and the brothers were supported themselves as copyists. Tom A. Kempis copied much and wrote various little books on religious life. He became sub-prior, but had not experienced enough of the outer world to be of much use as prefect over the domestic arrangements of the house, and was set aside after short trial in that office. He lived to be 90 and died in the year 1471. The Imitation of Christ, perhaps the most famous devotional book in modern literature, was issued simply without any author's name when Thomas A. Kempis was 45 years old. Fontenelle called it the finest work that has proceeded from the pen of man, the gospel being of divine origin. Until the end of the 16th century, the authorship of the book was never doubted. In 1604, a Spanish student found the book quoted in what he supposed to be a sermon of Bonaventura, who died in 1273, and claimed for it accordingly a much earlier origin. But the sermon was not by Saint Bonaventura. It was written after the death of Thomas A. Kempis. The controversy, however, went on. Authorship of the famous book was claimed for John's Scottish Erigena, for Saint Bernard, for Giovanni Gerso, for Pope Innocent III, for Scotto Giovanni, Thomas Gallus, David of Augsburg, Bonaventura, Ubertin of Cassalis, Peter de Corbaris, Ludolf of Saxony, Calcar, Humbert, Martinus Carthus, Giovanni Michel, Johannes Pommery, John Gerson, Chancellor of Paris, Walter Hilton, a monk of Sheen, John A. Kempis, Thomas's elder brother, and John of Canabacho, wherever that may be. Few living books have given occasion for more extensive wanderings about the desert of dead learning. The translation here given is by Dr. George Stanhope, who was Dean of Canterbury and Chaplain in Ordinary to the King. It was first published in 1696 and is the translation that has been commonly used in England. It went through 17 editions from 1696 to 1809. Dr. Stanhope is not free from the usual objection to translators of religious books. He has endeavored as a translator to expand his text by addition of words, clauses, and even sentences that do not alter the purport and order of the thoughts, but give more time for dwelling upon each link in the chain. The pithy style of the original is thus lost in flowing sentences that pleased the readers of Queen Anne's reign. The book is a very good example of translation on this principle. Thomas A. Kempis speaks through Dr. Stanhope in the language of a modern divine, and the whole voice is so true for every time that the spirit of the book suffers no change by interferences with petty details of the outward form that suffers alteration with a lapse of years. H.M., June 1886.